Al-Qaeda fighters hear the rotor blades of a large helicopter approaching. They are heavily armed with AK-47s and rocket-propelled grenade launchers. A single rocket can blast a chopper out of the sky from a range of 300 meters. The American chopper is already 200 meters away and closing. The pilots are convinced they have a clear run to the summit. The men prepare to leap from the open door of the craft once it lands. The pilots prepare to set down. Suddenly, they spot figures on the peak. The pilots attempt to abort the landing. But it's too late. A rocket-propelled grenade rips into the chopper's fuselage. They lose power. The guns are dead. The chopper is a sitting duck. Evasive action is their only option. The pilots bank. Roberts is knocked off his feet. A colleague grabs him. The Chinook tilts in the air. Roberts hits the ground. The pilots fight for control. They manage to steer the stricken chopper away from the enemy. It crash lands 7 kilometers away. Roberts is stranded on the mountain. On Takagar, Roberts has been pinned down by enemy fire for almost 2 hours. All he has to do is to hold out long enough for rescue. Then, his situation gets worse. He's shot in the right leg. 2 kilometers above Takagar, an unmanned Predator surveillance drone comes into position. The Predator is controlled remotely via satellite by a US ground control station, 1,500 kilometers away in Oman, on the Arabian Peninsula. From there, live images from the Afghan mountaintop are relayed to military chiefs in America and to the Bagram Air Base, 180 kilometers north of Takagar. The SEALs are tense as they approach. They are here to save Robert. The pilot steers the Chinook onto the ridge, when it immediately comes under fire. Touchdown. 6 of Robert's colleagues launch into battle. An intense firefight erupts. The SEALs are immediately pinned down by a barrage of machine gun fire. The battle rages on the ridge. Technical Sergeant John Chapman kills 2 Al-Qaeda fighters. Then, he's hit. He dies where he falls. Al-Qaeda hold the high ground, and their gun of choice. The Russian-made 50 caliber Dushka machine gun holds 12.7mm heavy rounds. The gun's power and range is devastating. Each round is capable of penetrating inch-thick armor plate at 500 meters. The SEALs are packing M4 light assault rifles. Against the destructive power of the Dushka, they are simply no match. 2 more Americans are hit. Outgunned and severely outnumbered, the SEALs are in deep trouble. They retreat. There's no sign of their fallen colleague, Roberts. Roberts has been killed. General Hagenbeck witnessed his execution via the satellite surveillance images.
It was gut-wrenching to see Al-Qaeda had grabbed him. We saw them move into a shadowy area, never to be seen again.
The SEALs don't know that Roberts is already dead. They are out of radio contact with their US base. Their helicopter has been damaged and returned to base. The SEALs are now fighting for their own survival. The rescuers need to be rescued. A US AC-130 gunship strafes the mountain ridge. The gunship halts the enemy gunfire. But the AC-130s are large and slow-moving. They rarely fly in daylight because they are vulnerable to enemy fire. This is not a rescue. The gunship is ordered back to base. The 5 remaining SEALs immediately come under fire again. The ridge is being held by Al-Qaeda. The SEALs team is forced to retreat. Their helicopter has returned to base. Their crash Chinook is 7 kilometers away. And Bagram Air Base is 180 kilometers north. Within 15 minutes, 2 Chinook helicopters are spinning up.
We were scrambling as fast as we could to get a rescue operation underway.
Captain Self leads 10 Rangers in the first helicopter, Razor 1. They are mobilizing so quickly, they will receive their orders on the way. Oscar Ascano is on the second Chinook, Razor 2. The Rangers are now a 20-strong force, heading to Takagar. For the 3rd time in 3 hours, Al-Qaeda fighters on Takagar prepare for battle. HQ orders them to fly to a safe area, away from Takagar, and to await orders. The other men on the first Quick Reaction Force Razor 1 are ordered to continue on their own. They've got their medic, Corey Lamoureux, on board. He was due to return home, but volunteered to stay on for this one operation. Next to him is right minigunner Phil Svitak.
It was electric, for sure. We knew we were going, we just didn't really know what we were going to do.
The cover of darkness is gone.
As we come around to land, basically just got our ass handed to us.
A burst of machine gun fire rips through the chopper. Svitak, the gunner next to Corey, is shot. Both pilots are wounded.
They just fired us up. I mean, there was just gunfire everywhere. You see the effects of it, but you can't hear it.
The guns shred the right engine's turbine blades. The 27-ton Chinook falters.
I heard that engine whine, and I just broke into a cold sweat.
Then, an RPG hits the Rangers' aircraft.
The aircraft was just shoved in the air to the side and then just fell out from under us.
The Chinook crashes into the snow just 73 meters from the Al-Qaeda camp. Lamoureux turns to his fallen colleague.
I heard, people yelling and screaming that were hurt.
Hang in there, buddy.
But Spytak is already dead. Like the SEALs before them, the Rangers' rescue mission is turning into a fight for survival. Al-Qaeda continue to unload a barrage of fire. The Rangers are sitting ducks. Nate's self falls as he runs out of the helicopter. 2 Rangers are shot, exiting the chopper.
I knew that they were dead, and it registered with me for a second. The enemy's gunfire really brought me back to the here and now.
Self attempts to return fire, but his gun jams, and he is forced to take one from a dead comrade.
We were in such a bad place. There was no cover. The only cover was provided by our own gunfire.
As the battle rages, Al-Qaeda fighters shoot 3 more Americans. More than 45 meters down the mountain, a separate battle is taking place. The Navy SEALs who came back for Neil Roberts are under enemy fire and in need of rescue. 2 of the men are badly wounded. At Bagram Air Base, General Hagenbeck watches live pictures from the battlefield.
About everything that could go haywire occurred. And they were literally in the fight for their life from the moment the wheels touched down.
On Takagar, medic Corey Lamoureux and his patients take cover in the downed Chinook. 4 men are dead. 3 are wounded. One of the pilot's hands has been almost severed.
He was pumping blood probably 6 feet in the air, just like the movies. And he was holding his wrist and screaming. I go to turn on the vital signs monitor, and the screen had 3 bullet holes in it.
Ranger Captain Nate Self must take his men out of the open ground. An Al-Qaeda fighter fires another RPG at the men.
When I saw the RPG coming at me, for a split second I was just waiting for the pain to set in.
Self is hit, but the snow diminishes the shrapnel damage.
That hurts, but I can deal with it.
Captain Self makes it to the shelter of rock outcrops. The enemy are in fortified bunkers higher up the ridge, with commanding views. Al-Qaeda have already shot down 2 American helicopters. They have strategic advantage on the ground. The stranded Rangers must start calling their own shots.
I need air support.
Ranger Captain Self calls in nearby air support. 2 F-15 jet fighters appear on the horizon. Each aircraft is equipped with a 20mm multi-barreled machine gun and massive 500-pound bombs. The Rangers are too close to the enemy's bunkers for bombs. They too would be in the line of fire.
Give me gun! Give me gun!
Self calls in the guns. The pilot flies a dry run. The F-15 fires a barrage of rounds into the peak. The pilot makes another pass. The second F-15 does a run, firing into the enemy bunker. But Al-Qaeda fighters continue to return fire. The airstrikes have had little effect. Al-Qaeda are creating chaos in the American forces, pinned down by Al-Qaeda fighters on the peak. The team of SEALs are still stranded and under heavy fire. What started as a reconnaissance mission is now a desperate battle to save lives. When the second quick reaction force land, 610 meters down the mountain, they are immediately confused by the terrain.
Silence just kind of covered everything.
They struggle up the mountainside, deep in snow, weighed down with weapons and armor. It will take hours to reach the other rangers, who are pinned down in the snow on the peak of Takagar, and whose situation has just got worse. They're under heavy mortar fire.
That shifted my gears mentally. We needed to do something quickly.
Captain Self calls in air support again. This time, they will bomb the enemy. The first pilot flies a dry run. He is then cleared for a strike. Moving at 300 meters per second, the F-16 launches a 500-pound bomb. If it hits, it will wipe out the Al-Qaeda camp. It misses. On his next run, the pilot drops another between two Al-Qaeda positions. All the F-16's bombs have missed. Al-Qaeda continue to fight. Further down the mountain, Oscar Ascano and the rest of the reinforcements struggle in the snow and thin air.
I was shocked. After only about 20 paces, I was already smoked. And I was irritated with myself.
To lighten his load, he removes his rear Kevlar armor plates, each weighing 3 kilograms. The reinforcements move more quickly up the ridge. They are suddenly blasted with enemy mortars.
You can't really evade a mortar attack, especially not in the position that we were on. We were on a ridgeline that was so narrow.
Everyone all right? We're okay? Good.
They are easy targets.
I knew I didn't want to die. But I accepted that I might. If one of us gets hit, that could really mean the end of the mission and the end of all of us.
On Takagar, the first quick reaction team still takes cover. Corey Lamoureux and the other medic are still in the stricken Chinook, trying to keep the 3 surviving wounded stable. They are still dangerously exposed, and medical supplies are running low. Throughout the battle, the Rangers have been receiving radio communications from the Predator drone overhead. Captain Nate Self then makes an unprecedented move. He contacts the Predator's radio operator to check if it is armed. The unmanned aerial vehicle has only ever been used for surveillance. It has never fired weapons in battle before. The Predator drone carries 2 laser-guided Hellfire 100-pound missiles, each one capable of picking out a single moving target on the ground. One of the missiles scores a direct hit on the enemy bunker. But the mortar attacks keep coming. There are just 6 able Rangers. The rest of the men are either wounded or treating the wounded. There is only 50 meters of no man's land between them and the enemy. With airstrikes failing, Al-Qaeda's basic equipment is beating America's high-tech firepower. Self has nothing left to lose. He makes a massive decision. He and his men will assault the enemy bunker and go face-to-face with Al-Qaeda. The Rangers launch themselves up the slope.
As we assaulted with the 4 of us, I don't think any of us were afraid.
The Dushka 50 caliber heavy machine gun unleashes its devastating power once more.
I felt that this had changed the game, that a machine gun was too much for 4 of us to take.
They are forced to retreat. It is completely demoralizing for the men.
It was embarrassing as a leader of such great warriors to stop and retrack. As Americans, we don't necessarily train the defense. We always assume that we'll be on the offensive.
The Rangers have been fighting for 4 hours. Captain Self's team are facing defeat.
Yeah, I was in a really troubled state of mind. I mean, there was no clear answer. There was no clear path out of this situation.
The second team of Rangers have been scaling the mountain for 2.5 hours and are exhausted. Finally, they join the other Rangers. Oscar Escano is briefed on the enemy positions.
The odds were really stacked against us. We are our own reinforcements. If we encounter more resistance than we expected, we just have to fight harder.
We're taking heavy fire.
Oscar gives his team only a minute to get their breath back, because Self's team is under threat. What started as a rescue mission has turned into a life-or-death battle for control of the ridge. 2 Chinooks have been shot down, airstrikes have failed, and the Army Rangers' Quick Reaction Force have been beaten back by Al-Qaeda. Captain Self knows that their only hope of survival is to take the bunker, but they have already failed once.
We put together a very simple plan. The plan was, we shoot and you move.
Just before we set out on the assault, the enemy was quiet. We didn't see the enemy. We had no idea what the enemy was doing.
Everyone that could stand up just stood up and began to shoot.
A 14-man Ranger force assaults the camp.
The assault began with just a massive amount of firepower.
We were fanning across a completely open area with nothing in between us and the enemy. Not even a rock or a fallen tree stump. There was nothing.
The first gun position is taken. The Dushka's heavy fire is finally silenced. A few meters away, they find Roberts' dropped equipment. But Ranger Captain Self knows the battle is not yet over. Further down the mountain, the men they came to save, a team of Navy SEALs, are still battling.
We were right in the middle of the enemy's terrain. I was wondering, will we be able to hold out? What's the enemy going to do next? Do we have enough time for this?
They must secure the ridge. Medic Corey Lamoureux is convinced the area has been secured. He prepares for an evacuation by moving the wounded outside the helicopter. It is another ambush.
I can remember thinking to myself, oh, this is really going to suck.
Before he can react, he takes several bullets to his body.
I had never been shot before. The pain was intense, you know. Whether I was actually paralyzed, I'm not sure.
His fellow medic, Jason Cunningham, is also hit. He is slipping away.
He's losing blood, and we need to get to him quickly.
Once again, the Rangers are in desperate trouble. The Americans have stirred up a hornet's nest. US observation points in the valley see more groups of Al-Qaeda fighters moving around the mountain. Al-Qaeda are outmaneuvering the Americans. Al-Qaeda launch a devastating counterattack. A critical situation
I need it now.
just got worse.
My first thought was that this is really going to suck for my kids because I knew I was going to die.
Ranger Captain Nate Self calls in air support again. This time, the well-aimed bombs nullify the counterattack from the valley. The enemy fire stops immediately. But for how long?
I need a helicopter to evacuate the wounded.
The mountainous ridge of Takagar is littered with dead and wounded American soldiers. They need immediate rescue and urgent medical attention. But with 2 Chinooks downed on the mission already, would commanders risk sending in more in broad daylight? Corey Lamoureux, injured himself, has an impossible task. He has few medical supplies. His medic partner, Cunningham, is the most severely injured soldier. The team do what they can to keep Cunningham and the casualties stable. Until the men can be evacuated for surgery, one of their most pressing needs is to remain warm. It is bitterly cold, and in the late afternoon the temperature is dropping fast. Throughout the day, American bombers keep the enemy at bay. At 6 p.m., the wind picks up and the temperature drops. Jason Cunningham has been struggling to hold on for over 6 hours. Just before 8:15 p.m., 17 hours after the first shot was fired, commanding officers at Bagram finally give orders for the evacuation. The wounded are taken off in the first Chinook. A second takes Captain Self and the dead, including SEAL Neil Roberts. Captain Self reflects on the mistakes of the mission. Why weren't the enemy picked up by the original surveillance?
To rely on technology when you think it's going to provide advantage and it doesn't is actually a disadvantage.